right, Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 790 KFYO. We turn our attention to even more political stuff. Matt Mackowiak, GOP political strategist, co-founder of MustReadTexas.com, joining us this morning. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Doing great. How about you?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us today. Let's start off with Trump. Made headlines over the weekend. He's in a little bit of controversy, which I know is shocking that Donald Trump and controversy are in the same sentence. Donald Trump had comments about a judge that is, presiding over the Trump University case. Trump saying that the judge cannot possibly be fair because he is of Mexican heritage. He was born in Indiana, the judge was. GOP lawmakers are backing away from Donald Trump. Even those who have, basically endorsed Donald Trump have backed away from him now. What these comments that he's making? These have to come back and bite him at some point, right?
Yeah, and you got to remember that the primary electorate is a small percentage of the general electorate. We're going to have 130 to 150 million people vote in November. You had 25 or 30 million people vote in the Republican primary, and unfortunately, Trump seems to think he can basically do everything he did in the primary in the general election, and he'll be fine because he won the primary so convincingly. So he hasn't, kind of realized that the general election is going to be totally different, and the groups of voters that are going to decide the general election are totally different. It is going to be white women. It is going to be Hispanics, particularly in battleground states. It's going to be independent voters. And he can't perform worse than Romney did with Hispanics. He can't perform worse than Romney did with African Americans. And right now he's doing both. He's winning men strongly, but he's losing women badly, particularly white women. And so you can't lose Hispanics and African Americans and white women. There just simply aren't enough white men. Yeah, I don't understand why. What doesn't make sense to me is if he truly thought the judge was biased, his legal team would have filed a motion for recusal. And so sometimes happens, and one legal team will do that. The judge will listen to arguments. It's a little bit strange that the judge gets to decide if he himself should recuse himself, but this is part of what being a judge is. Unfortunately, his legal team has that motion. So the only thing that would make sense is that Trump is either going to an unsatisfactory ultimate result by blaming the judge, or he's trying to force the judge to recuse himself. Because unfortunately, the judicial rules don't allow him to respond publicly to these attacks that Trump is making. So, look, you can't find hardly any. I guess we all have a heritage, and I guess is every judge biased towards their own? That's what being a judge is all about. It's putting whatever personal biases aside and listening to the arguments that are being made.
Hey, Matt, your phone's breaking up a little bit. We're going to give you a call back, and we're going to take the break. We're going to give Matt Mackowiak a call back because your phone's breaking up a little bit. We'll be right back. Chad Hasty Show, KFYO. All right, Chad Hasty Show, KFYO. We're back with Matt Mackowiak, GOP political strategist. Matt, we were talking about Donald Trump and his comments on the judge in the Trump University case. Senator Jeff Flake, Arizona Republican, said today that he can't endorse Trump, and part of the reason is because of Trump's rhetoric on this judge and some of the other things that Trump has said in the past. I can't imagine that, when you have someone like a Paul Ryan out there and some of these other Republicans who have endorsed Trump but done so just because they basically had to, they're put into a pretty tough position on this, aren't they, when they look out not only for their own political future but the political future for the Republican Party?
Yeah, and that's the challenge of endorsing him is then you're being asked to defend everything he says and does. And, of course, everyone that endorses him doesn't support everything he says and does, but that's the unfair standard that they're held to. Rick Wilson just wrote a piece about this over the weekend, arguing that it's better for candidates not to endorse him because then they don't have to defend everything he says and does. And so, I just wrote a piece for The Hill this morning explaining why I think Trump has really squandered the last month he was gifted this month-long head start into the general election. No one thought the Republican race would be over first. No one thought our convention would be, less rowdy than theirs and unpredictable than theirs is going to be. But that's the situation we find ourselves in. So instead of pivoting to the general election, building a better campaign team, being more disciplined, focusing on those voter subgroups that are going to determine this election, he's, kind of focused on himself. He's not talking about what voters care about. He's talking about what he cares about. And so I think last week was a very bad week for Trump. When you combine that with the speech that Hillary gave, which I think gave her some mojo, which Trump didn't really, wasn't prepared to respond to, didn't have, sort of a rapid response team ready to respond to everything Hillary was saying, he's going to have to up his game considerably. He's not going to win by Hillary losing. He's going to have to go win this election. It's a winnable election. Hillary's a very weak candidate. You still have this FBI investigation that hasn't resolved itself. And in fact, she hasn't even really put Bernie away yet. But boy, there's not much in the last month that's been all that encouraging, apart from him putting out his Supreme Court list.
Yeah. I visit with Matt Mackowiak. Matt, let's take a look at the Democrats. Tomorrow, 5 states up for grabs. It looks like Hillary will most likely be able to clinch the nomination, at least with the superdelegates, by winning the state of New Jersey. But California is the big toss-up, and there was a piece out a couple of weeks ago in the New York Times, I believe, and it was a former Clinton staffer and a former pollster who said, hey, there's a chance that if Bernie wins this thing in California, that he can go into a convention and throw the convention into a tailspin.
Yeah, that was an op-ed written by Doug Schoen, who's a former Bill Clinton pollster, who's kind of broken away from the Clintons in the Wall Street Journal. And it made the point that, yes, if Bernie wins California, it's going to change the entire narrative of the Democratic race. And they also made the case that this FBI investigation remains a very large variable. The challenge Bernie's going to face is that the networks are going to call this thing over tomorrow night. And what's really interesting about this is the Democratic race is very different from ours on the Republican side because of this phenomenon of superdelegates. What is putting Hillary over the line is the superdelegates. But the superdelegates haven't voted yet. I mean, some of them have announced what they're going to do. Only like 46 of them have endorsed Bernie. Hundreds of them have endorsed Hillary. But they haven't really cast their ballot until the convention. So they're being counted as if they'd already voted, just like a lot of these states are being counted, but they haven't voted yet. So it's an interesting scenario, and you're going to see Bernie's team, if he loses California tomorrow night, go crazy when the media begins to call Hillary the presumptive Democratic nominee, because they do not believe that that's accurate. And so we'll see where it goes from here. My other feeling is if Hillary's going to win New Jersey easily, if she does that and then they call the race over, that may affect Bernie's turnout in California, because California's obviously 3 hours behind. So he really does need either a tie or a narrow win in California to keep this thing going for the next month, because he's got to have to go to Philadelphia, and he's going to have to flip hundreds of superdelegates. And I think the only way he can do that is, number one, win California, and number two, have Hillary ultimately likely be indicted or have very serious criminal wrongdoing in the FBI matter.
What do you think the likelihood of that scenario that you just mentioned? What do you think the likelihood is of that happening?
I think there's probably a 25% chance Bernie wins California, and I think there's probably a 50% chance the FBI issues a criminal referral to the Department of Justice. I think there's a very low chance DOJ chooses to indict her. But in a way, it may be worse if they forward a criminal referral, but she's not indicted, because in that circumstance, you may have a series of very high-ranking FBI officials, including perhaps the FBI director, resign in protest. And then that becomes a scandal that engulfs not just Hillary, but also Obama, changes the entire race. So I still think there's a decent chance that's going to happen. I just don't think the FBI does, year-long investigations and offers immunity and has hundreds of agents working on something if they don't think a crime's been committed.
It just seems that this is a win for the Republicans. This is a winnable presidential. This should be a slam dunk Republican win for the White House. But for Donald Trump, I don't know if it's a campaign team that just can't bring the guy down to earth. I don't know what it is. But it just, I think it worries a lot of folks out there that, him continuing to pop off about things that really don't matter is really putting in danger a slam dunk win for the Republicans.
It's extremely discouraging and extremely disappointing. If you believe, like I do, like a lot of people do, that we are on the precipice of losing the country, of heading in a direction where we've gone too far or we can't turn around, you really think this election is crucial. And to think that Hillary's, the front runner right now and the odds-on likely next president of the United States is really a scary thought. I mean, she's going to be a more effective Obama because she understands how to work within Congress. And she said she's going to go farther than Obama has on executive orders as it relates to illegal immigrants and Wall Street and other issues. So, yeah, it is deeply troubling, the position we find ourselves in. This should be a winnable race. Trump, still can win, but boy, he's got to right the ship quickly here. I think, Chad, there are three moments that are going to matter going forward in terms of this election. One is the FBI primary and what happens with regard to that. Two is the Republican convention and who Trump chooses as his VP and how that rollout goes. And three is the threshold question answered at the televised debates, which is Trump a credible president of the United States? Those are the three questions that matter. We don't have answers to those three questions yet. So in my mind, this election can go either way.
Yep. Matt Mackowiak, GOP political strategist, co-founder of MustReadTexas.com. Matt, real quick, what can people find on your website today?
Yeah, just starting to update it from over the weekend. Obviously more attention on Paxton, attention on Greg Abbott as it relates to the Trump University investigation from a few years ago. A lot of other political news, best reporting from around the state of Texas. You can find it at MustReadTexas.com.
All right. As always, Matt, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Take care, Chad. Have a great week.
You too. That's Matt Mackowiak. Follow him on Twitter at Matt Mackowiak.